I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, spilling my guts on a relationship advice forum, but honestly, I need to get this off my chest. Maybe someone can tell me what to do, or maybe this is just some twisted story I need to tell myself to make sense of it all. My wife Emma and I got married about 3 years ago. It was one of those fairy tale things. We met in college, fell hard, and by the time we moved in together, everything felt perfect. She was beautiful, long dark hair, bright eyes, a smile that lit up a room. I thought I knew her better than anyone, including myself. We shared dreams of future plans for a family someday. She was everything I ever wanted, or so I thought. Our apartment was cozy, small but enough for us. I'd come home from work, smell her cooking, hear her laugh from the kitchen. That's until last night. That's when I found out she'd been lying straight to my face for months. I found out through something as simple as a text message on her phone, something I never imagined I'd do, but I just had this gut feeling. I'd been noticing her phone was always in her hand, her fingers nervously bouncing when she thought I wasn't watching, but I dismissed it. I trusted her, or I did. That night I was sitting on the couch trying to unwind after a long day. She was in the kitchen, humming a tune, probably preparing some surprise for our upcoming anniversary. I was about to ask her about it when I saw her phone light up. I didn't deliberately peek, but it was just there on the table, screen glowing. I glanced over and caught a message, nothing explicit but enough to make my stomach drop. It was from a number I didn't recognize, and the text, "Can't wait to see you tonight, missed you all day." I froze. My hands were suddenly clammy and my chest felt tight. I stared at the screen, willing it to be some kind of mistake. But no, there was more. A string of messages, just snippets talking about meetings, plans, and most painfully, how much she loved her boss. His name was Daniel. He was her superior at work, a man in his late 40s, confident, charming, and completely the opposite of me. I sat there stunned. My mind was racing. How long? How long had she been sneaking around? My heart pounded so loud I swear she could hear it from across the room. I wanted to yell, to confront her, but I didn't. Instead, I quietly took a screenshot of that conversation and shut her phone without her noticing. She kept humming, acting as if everything was normal. Her hands shook slightly as she poured wine, but she played it off. When she finally looked at me, her face was a perfect mask of innocence. I could see her eyes flickering, maybe a flicker of guilt or maybe just nervousness. "Hey, everything okay?" she asked, her voice too sweet, too casual. "Yeah," I said, voice hoarse. "Just tired." I couldn't look at her directly, not yet. My mind kept spinning. I had all the evidence I needed now. That's what hurt the most, knowing she'd been lying right to my face, planning surprises, pretending everything was perfect. She had been living a double life, and I was the last to know. I don't know how I managed to hold it together. I wanted to scream at her, ask her how long she'd been doing this, why she thought she could get away with it. But instead I just nodded and said I needed some air. I walked out, my palms sweaty, my stomach churning. I didn't want to confront her just yet. I needed to have a plan first. But the worst part, that sick feeling, knowing I'd been blind, trusting her when I shouldn't have. Trust, it seems, was just a fragile illusion. I'd fooled myself into thinking we had something real, but she had other plans. Now I'm stuck in this mess, trying to figure out what's next. And honestly, I feel like a fool for not seeing the signs earlier. Anyway, I've got the evidence. I've got her number, her plans, her lies. What I don't have is a clear head. That's where I need help. Do I just confront her, call her out in front of her friends? Or do I wait, let her dig her own grave? Whatever happens, I know one thing: I'm not going to be her fool anymore. Not after this. The morning after was a mess. I woke up with that raw, sick feeling in my stomach, like I'd swallowed a stone. My mind kept replaying her texts, her words, her promises, her lies. I kept thinking about how she'd been planning our anniversary surprise while secretly sneaking around with her boss. Everything suddenly felt fake, like I'd been living in a well-constructed illusion that shattered overnight. I knew I couldn't just sit there, pretending everything was fine. I needed to figure out what I was going to do fast. Of course, I couldn't confront her right away. Not until I had a plan. I had the evidence, yes, but I also needed to understand her mindset. Why did she do this? Did she think she could get away with it forever? The anger simmered beneath my skin, but I pushed it down. For now, I had to be strategic. I spent the day doing what I do best: analyze, plan, and prepare. I revisited her phone, scrolling through the messages again. There were details I hadn't noticed the night before. She'd been texting him constantly, almost obsessively. I also found a few receipts from late-night dinners, hotel bookings, and even some flirtatious emojis. All of it was right there, laid out like a roadmap of betrayal. I kept thinking about her smile, her laugh, how she used to tell me I was the only one. That's what made all this sting so much. I never suspected a thing. I felt like I'd been hit with a punch I didn't see coming. It's like everything I believed in was just a lie made of paper, ready to be torn apart. Later that afternoon, I decided I needed to see her again, face to face. I didn't want to do this through texts or calls. I needed to see her reaction, read her body language, catch her lying if she tried. So I texted her, "We need to talk now." No explanation, no rationalization, just that. She replied within 5 minutes, "What's wrong? Can't we talk tonight?" I knew she was nervous, but I also knew she thought she could play it off. I wasn't buying it anymore. I was tired of her lies. I mean, now I shot back. In person. She hesitated. Then she texted, "Fine, come home." Her words felt like a trap. I drove back to the apartment, my stomach twisting. The closer I got, the more my palms sweat. When I stepped inside, the air was thick with tension. She was in the kitchen pretending to be busy, but her eyes darted towards the door the second I entered. We stood there for a beat. Then I threw the phone on the table and pushed her gently but firmly. "Who is Daniel?" I demanded, voice low but firm. She looked caught, her face draining of color. I don't know what you mean," she stammered. "Don't lie," I snapped. "I saw your messages. I know everything. How long?" Her eyes flickered and I could see her trying to muster a lie. "It's not what you think," she whispered. "Not what I think. You've been planning our anniversary while screwing your boss. That's pretty clear," I said, my voice rising. "How long has this been going on?" She looked down, tears welling up. "It's been a few months. I didn't mean for it to happen. It just did." That's when something snapped inside me. I'd been calm, trying to play it cool, but now I was furious. Not just hurt, I was furious. I clenched my fists, feeling my nails dig into my palms. "You lied to me every single day. You pretended everything was perfect. And while I was planning our anniversary, you were with him." She looked at me, tears streaming down her face now. "I swear I love you. It was a mistake. I don't want to lose you." Losing me, that ship had already sailed. I looked her dead in the eyes and knew this was just the beginning. I had a plan, a burning desire for revenge. It was time to act, to turn the tables. No more secrets, no more lies. She'd played her hand, and now I was ready to play mine. I told her I needed some time to think. I walked out of that apartment, feeling lighter but more furious than ever. The plan was forming in my head, something calculated, something I knew she wouldn't see coming. I had to show her I wasn't the fool she thought I was. This wasn't just about ending the marriage. It was about making her feel the pain she'd caused. I had all her secrets now, and I was going to use them. She thought she could cheat, lie, and walk away. She had no idea what was coming. But first I had to make sure everything was in place, every detail locked down. And as I sat in my car, engine humming softly, I knew one thing for certain. Emma had pushed me into a corner, and I was about to fight back in a way she'd never forget. The next few days were a blur. I didn't sleep much. I was too busy plotting, piecing together exactly how I was going to turn this nightmare into a calculated act of revenge. I had the evidence, screenshots, receipts, her texts, all stored securely on my laptop, ready to be used when the time was right. But I also needed a clear mind, clarity on what I was actually after. I kept thinking about her, how she used to look at me with that sparkle in her eyes, how she'd promised forever. Now that promise felt like a distant memory, replaced by betrayal and lies. The worst part: I knew she was still lying to me, acting like everything was fine, like she was waiting for me to forgive her. I wasn't going to do that. Not yet. I decided I needed to make her believe I was backing off for a while. That's when I started to think about the plan, something slow, something that would make her realize she'd lost control. I needed her to feel vulnerable, to see that I was no longer the naive husband she once knew. One afternoon I called her, pretending everything was normal. "Hey, I'm taking a day off work. Thought we could talk." I kept my tone casual, calm, but underneath I was boiling with rage. Okay, she said, her voice a little too sweet. I'll be here. When I arrived at the apartment, I didn't rush. I took my time, acting like I was just there to talk, to understand, to forgive. I wanted her to underestimate me. She was in the living room, nervously fiddling with her bracelet. She looked tired, her face pale, like she'd been crying. That was good. I wanted her to think I was just giving her a chance. Emma, I said softly, sitting down on the couch. We need to clear some things up. I've been thinking about everything, and honestly, I need to know why. She looked away, her jaw trembling. I don't know what to say. Try, I pressed. Did you really think I wouldn't find out, that I wouldn't see the lies? She finally looked at me, tears brimming. It was a mistake. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I was just so lost, and Daniel made me feel alive again. I swear I love you. I wanted to tell you. I cut her off. You wanted to tell me after you've been lying all this time. Her hands shook as she reached out. Please, I don't want to lose everything. I'll end it with him, I swear. I nodded, feeling my stomach turn. You should end it. But that's not enough. You lied for months, Emma. You lied about everything. How do I know you're telling the truth now? She looked desperate. You have every right to be angry. I screwed up. I thought I could have both, but I was wrong. Just give me another chance, please. That's when I knew I'd have to play a different game. I told her I needed some time. I told her I was going to be watching her, testing her. And I made her believe that I was still committed to saving the marriage. She looked at me, hope flickering in her eyes. That was the moment I knew I had her exactly where I wanted. While she was distracted, I pulled out my phone and double-checked the evidence I had gathered. I knew I had to be smart. I couldn't afford to make a mistake. I had the texts, the receipts, everything. My plan was to let her think she was getting away with it, but I was ready to hit back hard when the time came. That evening I started subtly informing friends, mutual friends of course, about her infidelity. Not in a spiteful way, but enough to plant a seed. Let her see that her lies were unraveling. I also began to prepare a document, an email I was going to send to her boss, Daniel, exposing everything. I wanted him to know that I had everything, screenshots, dates, times. That would be her downfall. I kept everything in motion, but I also stayed calm on the surface. Inside, I was boiling. The cold rage was building, and I could feel it simmering just beneath my skin. I knew what I wanted now. I didn't just want her to suffer. I wanted her to pay. I wanted her to realize that the man she betrayed was no longer willing to be the fool. The night was quiet, but my mind was loud with plans. I was ready to push the button to make her see that her world was collapsing around her. I had the evidence, the timing, and the resolve. I wasn't just going to confront her. I was going to make her feel the consequences. And I could already see her crumbling, the cracks in her perfect little world widening. That's what gave me the strength to keep going. I knew I was close to making her regret everything, her betrayal, her lies, her choices. All I had to do now was wait for the right moment to strike. The days that followed felt like walking on thin ice. I kept up the facade of calm, but inside I was a volcano, ready to erupt. I knew I had everything I needed, but patience wasn't exactly my strong suit. Every time I saw her, smiling like nothing was wrong, I felt the urge to tell her I was onto her, to rip the mask right off her face. But I held back, knowing that rushing in would ruin everything. Instead, I spent those days weaving my plan carefully. I made sure every piece of evidence was in place, screenshots of her texts, the receipts, the hotel bookings. I even downloaded some of her emails, the ones she thought were private. I wanted her to see I was prepared, that I wasn't some naive husband by her lies. I wanted her to understand I was dangerous now, calm but deadly. One evening, when she was in the kitchen pretending to cook, I finally decided to confront her again, but this time with a different tone. I wanted her to feel my resolve, see that I was serious about ending this. I calmly sat on the couch and called her over. Emma, I said softly, we need to talk for real this time. She hesitated, then came over, her eyes wary. What is it? You've been lying, I said, pulling out my phone and displaying the screenshots. This is just the beginning. I have everything, and I want to know, do you still think you can get away with it? Her face paled, her hands trembling. I didn't mean for it to go this far, I swear. I love you, I was just feeling lost. Daniel made me feel alive again. I guess I got carried away, but I want to fix this, I do. I looked at her, feeling a cold streak of anger. Fix it after all these months. You've been planning anniversaries while screwing your boss. That's not fixing anything. That's destroying everything we had. She looked like she was about to cry. Please, I'll do anything. Just tell me what to do. I shook my head slowly. There's nothing left to do. I've made my decision. You're not getting out of this scot-free. You lied, you cheated, and now I'm going to make sure you pay for it. She looked desperate. What are you going to do? I reached into my pocket and pulled out a thick folder, an organized collection of all my evidence. This goes to your boss, Daniel. I'll send it today. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of woman you really are. Her eyes widened in shock. You wouldn't do that. Oh, I will, because I'm done playing nice. You want to betray me? Fine. I'll make sure you regret it, and I'm not just doing this for revenge. I want you to feel the pain you've caused. Maybe then you'll understand what you threw away. She looked like she might collapse. Please, she whispered, don't do this. I'll end it with him, I swear. Just give me another chance. I looked her in the eyes. You had your chance. It's over now. I knew I had to act fast. The email was ready, the evidence secured. I decided I'd send the email that night, but first I wanted her to see I was serious, that I wasn't bluffing. I wanted her to realize that the woman she thought she could manipulate had just become a liability she couldn't control anymore. Later that evening, I sat at my desk, staring at the screen. I hesitated for just a moment, then clicked send. The email was off, full of the proof I'd gathered. I didn't mention I'd been watching her every move. No need. She'd see it soon enough. The aftermath was almost immediate. She called me repeatedly, begging, pleading, crying. I didn't answer. I just sat back, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and emptiness. I'd finally taken control. She was unraveling, and I made sure she felt it. The real fallout started the next morning. Her phone was ringing nonstop, her boss was furious, and I knew her world was collapsing. I saw her sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at her phone, her face pale, eyes hollow. That's when I realized I'd done what I set out to do. I'd made her see that I wasn't the fool she thought I was. I got up slowly, walked over to her, and handed her the keys to the apartment. Pack your things, I said quietly. You're leaving today. She looked at me, her voice trembling. You're serious? Dead serious, I replied. I picked a place for you. You're free to go, but don't come back. She started crying again. I felt a strange sense of calm, like I'd finally taken the power back. As she grabbed her things, I couldn't help but think about how much better I felt. Not because I'd hurt her, but because I'd stopped being the fool she took me for. I closed the door behind her, the click echoing in the silent apartment. Standing there, I took a deep breath and realized something clear. Sometimes the only way to survive betrayal is to fight back with everything you've got. And in the end, you have to decide whether to let it break you or use it to build yourself back stronger. The silence that settled after she left was deafening. My apartment suddenly felt like a hollow shell, cold and empty. For a moment, I just stood there, staring at the doorway where she had disappeared, feeling the weight of everything I'd just done. It was a brutal blow, but honestly, I think I needed it. I needed her to see that I wasn't going to be the pushover she thought I was. The first thing I did was turn on my laptop and make sure my evidence was secure. Nothing was leaving my sight now. I'd already sent the email to her boss, the one with every screenshot, every text, every hotel receipt. It was done. That's when the reality hit me. I'd taken control, but the aftermath was only just beginning. I knew her world was crashing down around her, and honestly, I felt a strange sense of relief. That's not to say I was happy. She was hurt, I was, but I was finally free from the constant sting of betrayal. I felt lighter, sharper. The anger had burned itself out, replaced by a cold, calculated resolve. Now I had to see how she'd react, how her life would unravel. I decided to give her some space, let her stew in her own mess. But I couldn't just sit around, I needed to focus on me now. I reached out to a few friends, mutual friends, people I trusted, and told them what had happened, but I kept it vague. I didn't want to broadcast every detail. I just wanted to make her see that her lies were out in the open, that she was no longer the puppet master. That night, I sat alone in the living room, staring at the dim glow of my phone. I had set things in motion, but I knew she'd try to contact me, beg, plead, whatever. I wasn't interested in her apologies or explanations. What I wanted was for her to realize that her betrayal had consequences. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. I hesitated, then looked at the screen. It was her. I didn't answer. Instead, I let her leave a message. Her voice was trembling, full of regret and desperation. "I'm sorry, please call me. We need to talk. I'll do anything, just don't let this be the end." I stared at the message, feeling nothing but a cold satisfaction. That was her game, the guilt trip, the crying, the pleading. I wasn't falling for it. Not anymore. If she wanted to talk, she'd have to come to me. I wasn't chasing after her. I'd already made my move, and now it was her turn to face the fallout. The following morning, I woke up with a strange clarity. I knew she'd try to come back, maybe even beg in person. But I was done playing nice. I decided it was time for the final step, something that would make her see she'd lost everything. I went online and started researching local attorneys, real estate options, and how to legally sever ties. I wanted to be prepared for whatever came next. As I sat there, I realized I'd never been this calm after a betrayal before. I'd always been the guy who took the punches, who swallowed his pride, but not this time. I had fought back, and I'd won, or at least I'd won enough to regain my dignity. Around noon, I received a text from her, a simple, desperate message. "Please, can we talk? I love you. I don't want to lose you." I stared at it for a long moment, then typed back, "It's too late. I've made my decision. You're gone, Emma. I hope you find what you're looking for, but it's not with me anymore." That's when I packed a small bag, just enough clothes, and headed out the door. I had a new apartment lined up, something small but mine. I walked out of that apartment knowing I'd never look back. I'd finally taken control, and whatever pain I felt was worth it to reclaim my life. I handed the keys to the landlord, and as I did, I realized something final. Sometimes, the only way to truly move on from betrayal is to cut ties completely. To walk away and rebuild from scratch, knowing you did everything you could, and that you're better off without someone who'd betray you so completely. That's the lesson I'll carry with me from now on. Protect yourself, trust cautiously, and never forget that you're worth more than a liar's empty promises. The new apartment feels strange, like stepping into a different life I never expected. The walls are blank, the silence is loud, and for the first time in years, I breathe without that heavy weight pressing down on me. I've spent days unpacking, trying to put my life back together, piece by piece. Honestly, it's exhausting but also oddly freeing. Every morning, I wake up and remind myself I made the right choice. That betrayal, her lies, her deception, was a poison I can't afford to keep in my system. I don't think about her as much as I used to. Instead, I focus on rebuilding what I lost, trust in myself, my boundaries, my future. It's not easy, but it's necessary. I've blocked her number. I've deleted her from social media. Every reminder of her now is just another scar I don't need. I don't wish her harm, I just want her to understand that actions have consequences. That no matter how much she tried to hide her betrayal, it all comes out in the end. And you know what? I don't regret what I did. Not for a second. I consider it self-preservation. She betrayed me, lied to my face, and almost destroyed everything we built. I had to take control, not just for me but for my dignity. I finally understand that sometimes the only way to protect yourself is to cut out what's toxic and move forward. Every now and then, I get a strange pang of anger, mostly the kind that fuels my resolve. But that anger has turned into something else. Strength. I see now that I was naive to think I could fix her, to believe her promises when her actions screamed otherwise. I learned the hard way that trust is fragile and can shatter in an instant. I look around this new place and I see possibilities. I see a fresh start. I don't know what's ahead, but I know I'm better prepared for whatever comes. I've come to realize that revenge, in its own twisted way, was also about reclaiming my power. I refused to be the victim anymore. I took what was rightfully mine, my peace, my dignity, and I walked away from the chaos. And as I sit here, sipping my coffee in this quiet apartment, I finally feel a sense of closure. I'm no longer the man who was betrayed. I'm someone new, wiser, stronger, and finally free. The pain of betrayal still lingers, but it's a reminder of how far I've come. To anyone out there who's going through something similar, don't let betrayal define you. Fight for yourself, even if it means walking away from everything you thought was real. Because in the end, the only thing that matters is your peace. And no lie, no betrayal, no matter how deep, can take that away from you if you refuse to let it. I won't pretend I don't feel hurt sometimes, but I also feel hope. Hope that this new chapter will be better, more honest, more real. And that one day, I'll look back and see this as the moment I finally took control of my life. Because no matter how dark it gets, there's always a way out. You just have to be willing to walk toward the light.